Hey girlies, just a quick reminder before we dive into today's episode. The information shared on this podcast is intended to be general sports nutrition advice and education related to period recovery for female athletes. This is not specific to any one individual, and it may or may not apply to your situation. If you are looking for personalized guidance, be sure to apply to our RBSN Period Recovery Nutrition Coaching Program. Our 4-month period recovery program is designed to help you sustainably get your period back and keep it. You can apply now to get started in our program, and we'll leave the link for the program below. If you're not quite ready for that one-on-one approach, that's exactly why we created the Period Recovery Guide. It's designed to support the girlies working on period recovery, specifically if you've lost it due to hypothalamic amenorrhea. The full guide is coming soon, but you can download a free chapter right now to start your recovery journey. This is the Eat More Carbs Podcast. Hello and welcome back. This is the Eat More Carbs Podcast. It's Jenna here with Reilly. We are both dietitians and we talk every Thursday about sports nutrition for the girlies. Today we're going to be talking all about rest days, the importance of rest days, especially if you have HA, and we will kind of talk all about that. We're also going to do our high and low, so sharing just a little bit about like our week, the good, and maybe the part we wish had gone a little bit differently. And then lastly, we're going to talk about how we utilize a rest day. So instead of providing our training update, we're both in our running era, we're running a lot right now. We're just going to share about how like we personally use rest days and how we make that work for like our training.
Yay, I can't wait. We're so excited to chat with y'all today. I cannot wait to talk about rest days or recovery days. That's what we like to call them at RBSN.
Before we get into all of that good stuff, Reilly, what's your high and low? Update me.
I'm going to start off with my low. Recently, at the beginning of this month, we took a family vacation to Arizona, which I got to see Jenna. Yay. That's not my low. But it was our first time traveling with Char. So first time going on a plane, first time really kind of like staying anywhere besides like my parents or my in-laws for an extended period of time. And Char did really good for, I would say, 90% of the trip. On the way there, on the plane, she was really good. She did pretty good on the trip. She was like definitely a little shy. She's definitely a mama's girl and she did enjoy herself. Unfortunately though, on the way back, I would say about the last 20 to 30 minutes on the plane, I was the person with a crying baby. She was not having it. I thought we got away with it and I just felt so bad because I don't think she's cried that hard since like she literally came out of the womb. I was the person with a crying baby on the plane. So everybody who was on the plane with me from Phoenix to Charlotte, the beginning of April, I am sorry because that was Char.
Poor girl was not having it at the end of the trip. She was ready to be home.
She was. I think she's like a homebody, definitely. And I think she just like couldn't get comfortable. She just was like, I'm over this. Let me off this plane. Like, I want to be home. I want to be with my toys. I want to be in my bed. I'm over this. So it was a little bit of a struggle, unfortunately.
And you guys are really good about having a routine with her. Like, she's very used to when things happen and what's happening. And then to be kind of taken out of that routine. I thought she did so good the day that I came up and visited y'all as far as like how she did. Like, she's such a great baby, but I'm sure that it was like total like system shock for her to be in such a different place, to be in a different time zone and all of that. So it makes sense as to why the end of it, she was just like, Mom, I'm done.
Yeah. And we're also kind of transitioning from like 2 naps to 1 nap. So we're like in the middle of this like transition. We were on this plane. We had a 3-hour time change. We just had daylight savings. So there was a lot of things that were not in our favor, but we did make it through. Everybody's still in one piece and we are home and we have been home for a couple of weeks. So she's back on schedule. She's doing much better, but I felt bad because we were that person on the plane. My high kind of also has to do with Char. So Charlie goes to a nanny share during the day so that I can work at RBSN. And she's with one other girl in her little nanny share. So she goes over to somebody's house and plays a couple hours every single day. The other girl in the nanny share has an older sister who is about 3. After our trip to Arizona, I haven't seen the family in 2 weeks. We also had COVID, so Char's not been over there for a little bit. The little girl who's 3 ran to the front door this morning when I dropped off Char, because this is the first time we've seen them in a little bit, and she had cut her hair, and she was so excited because she cut her hair to look like my hair. She's like, look, Miss Reilly, I cut my hair to be like you.
That is so cute.
I know. I was like, I am like so touched right now. That is so sweet. Because she used to have like longer hair and we have the same color hair. She's like, I cut my hair to be like you. And I was like, that is so cute. I'm going to start crying right now.
Oh my gosh, I could cry. That is so sweet.
I know. I was like, oh, okay, well, that's amazing. I hope you don't regret your decision as a 3-year-old.
I'm sure
but
you won't.
I'm honored.
I love that.
I know. know.
She was so excited to show you.
I only see her like a little bit because like sometimes she's there with Char. She'll be there when I'm dropping off Char and stuff. So I just thought that was just made my day. So I had to share.
Oh, you're the cool mom.
I don't know about that. Yeah, but I thought that was really cute. How about you? How's everything going over there in Arizona?
I'm going to share my high first and then my low, because my low is like a kind of thing that only happens to me, I feel like. And I feel like everybody needs to hear about this and have a good laugh, because I think it's just so funny now. But in the moment, I was freaking out. So I'm really excited to share with all of you the events that happened a couple of days ago. First, my high definitely is that I got to see you guys. I got to meet your daughter and just be around you again. I know that we had like this pact after we graduated from the internship that we would see each other once a year. And due to COVID and life changes and moving across the country, we haven't been as good with that we hoped we would be. I think we've seen each other maybe 3 or 4 times is what we kind of figured out when we were together since we graduated, which definitely isn't every year, but we're doing our very best. And so it was just good to just see you and meet Charlie and Robbie's family too, of course. But that's my high for sure. Even though it did happen a little while ago, since we're talking about it today, that's my high. And then my low, I edit the podcast in this room. I do it on a computer monitor, and I leave my cell phone and my laptop in the kitchen because I don't want any distractions when I'm editing the podcast. For me, it's like deep work. It needs to be something that I do without any type of distraction. I need to be like completely separated from like interacting with clients. Like I block time on my schedule to make sure that this gets done. It's super important for RBSN to get the podcast out. So the other day when I was editing a podcast episode, left everything out in the other room, and all of a sudden I look at the clock and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's 11:40 and my dog has not been outside in a couple of hours. And I was like, I need to go let him out. So I do what I normally do, which is I walk into the kitchen area, which is usually where my dog is just hanging out. And I'm like, George, do you want to go outside? At that point in time, I noticed that my family group message starts blowing up because my sister has some exciting news that she wants to share with our family. So I'm like, okay, before I take my dog out, I will go say congratulations to my sister and then take my dog outside. I pick up my phone and my phone has sent to a person in my contacts named George, do you want to go outside? I wish I was making this up because the amount of panic that set into my system when I see that the top text thread in my phone isn't my family group message. It's to somebody named George. I'm not going to share the last name on the podcast to protect this individual, but immediately I'm going through my internal Rolodex of like, who is George? Thankfully, technology updates have allowed us to just carry our like old contacts forward throughout the years. So I have contacts in my phone from the beginning of time. Like I have no idea in this moment who George is. I'm like, is this someone I like went on a date with? Is this someone I was in a group project with? Like I have no idea. I'm racking my brain. I quickly go into the message. Thank goodness it's an iPhone. So I unsend the message. So at least hopefully hasn't seen it kind of a thing. But I'm still like standing there. I'm like, how did this happen? Like I don't have my phone. I don't have my computer. I just walked into the room and asked my dog if he wanted to go outside. So I'm freaking out because I'm like, oh my gosh, like who am I communicating with? And even if you delete a text message or unsend a message on an iPhone, the text thread still shows up at the top. So George is still going to see that he has a text message from Jenna that says, do you want to go outside? And like, what an awkward thing for someone to get a text message that says that. Like that is so uncomfortable. So anyway, I'm like, how did this happen in the first place? My best guess is that somehow Siri was activated on my watch, but I still have like the Siri part that's activated on my watch that makes you have to say like, send it. That prompt has to be given. So I have no idea how somehow that happened. I never said send a text message to, send it, nothing. The only words out of my mouth like were, do you want to go outside? I call one of my friends because I'm freaking out and I'm like, I don't know who this person is. She of course is laughing at me because it is hilarious. I'm sitting there and I'm like, I gotta Google this person. Like I have to Google this name to try to figure it out. And I'm not the best with remembering names. That's just not something that I'm really, really good at. When I was in college, I was employed by a swim team that was owned by a husband and wife. I primarily worked with the wife. She was the one that was kind of like business facing and all that sort of stuff. But I still had her husband's phone number saved in my phone just in case I needed something from like my W-2 didn't come through or my paycheck didn't come through or something like that. And his name is George. And I sent that to my employer from when I was in college. That's my love.
I was wondering because George is like maybe the generation up common name. Like there's not really a lot of people who are our age with the name George. So I was like, is it somebody who's older? That's so funny. I do feel like we all have like a story like that's happened to everybody one time.
Right. Yeah. It's just the panic that sets in, like the freeze that you feel from like the top of your body all the way down when you're like, how did this happen? And who is this person? And then on top of that, I'm like, did that cause complications for him where he's like, hey, honey, I know this came across my text messages, but like, I'm not going out and meeting someone in a parking lot. You know what I mean? Like how uncomfortable. So I was like,
what if they have like you and Nolan have like your account on the computer?
She's like saying this, she's like, that's weird. So my biggest hope is that maybe like he didn't have my phone number saved because like, why would he? And that maybe it just showed up as like an area code from the area. And he was like, oh, this is spam. Like this is, we get a lot of those spam text messages and stuff like that. So I never heard back or anything like that. But oh my gosh, what a level of just pure panic that happened for me.
That happened to me like a couple of months ago. I was running and it was like 5:45 in the morning. And I said like, hey Siri, like she's gonna go off now, but I said like, hey Siri, like skip this song, and then it goes calling Bob Beatty, and like that's my father-in-law at 5:45 in the morning, and I'm like, oh my god, stop, like
right. Bob is gonna think that there's an emergency because I'm calling this early in the morning. Yep.
And I'm like, how did you get that from that? Like, how did you get that? It's like literally the worst feeling. Like I know exactly what you're saying, but it's I feel like it's happened to all of us.
So I had to share that. It's definitely my low. Needless to say, Siri has been disabled on every single device that I own because I am just too nervous to have it on right now.
Oh, so funny. I want to do that too, but then my problem is that I can't prompt it if I'm running, if it's turned off.
It's the risk that we take when we have Siri on, I guess.
Yeah, first world problems, right?
100%. So I'll keep y'all updated if that happens to me again, or if George ever reaches back out and says,
no, I do not want to go.
No, I don't. So anyway, today we're actually talking about the importance of rest days and recovery days. Reilly, first off, can you kind of define what that actually means? Because I think for a lot of us, we think we're taking a recovery day or we think we're incorporating rest days in our routine. Why is that important is another big thing that we're going to want to dive into. But like, what is a rest day? What is a recovery day?
I like to think of a rest or recovery day as a non-training day. So a day that we do not train.
Why are they important for HA or period recovery?
Lots of reasons. And I think too that they're not just important for athletes who have HA, they're important for athletes who don't have HA. And a lot of the stuff that we talk about on this podcast is just like basic, nutrition recommendations. Like it's all important for fueling your body properly, for maximizing performance, for optimizing your health. So it's not just important for HA, but I would say recovery days are essential for all types of athletes. No matter what sport you're in, you need a recovery day. A true rest day is a day that has no training. And this is going to really allow your body to relax, recover, and almost reset to help you get back into training. How can rest and recovery days impact your performance as an athlete?
It's super important to incorporate them to improve your performance because, like you said, it allows that rest, recovery, repair. It also helps rebuild anything that we have like exacerbated like during training. So if you have run through all of your stores, if you need to kind of build up again, if you need to repair anything, all of those things can be done more efficiently when you aren't training. So allowing your body that time to repair, to recover, to then hopefully come back stronger, to hopefully coming back feeling more energized so you can have like a better performance outcome is the goal when we're thinking about like why is that important from like a performance perspective when it comes to training and recovery days.
Definitely. I think a lot of the time that we think that once our training has ended, like that's when our performance or our recovery and all of that has almost ended. So we're not thinking really what's happening outside of training. We're just really focused on like what's happening in our sport. But when we look at like the body's processes, even specifically glycogen, like glycogen resynthesis completely to like 100% is going to take up to 48 hours. So if we're constantly running through our glycogen and never giving it time to reset, we're never going to like maximize those stores that are available within the muscle.
Is that why we see a lot of people like leading into a big race that they will take like a big taper from training?
Exactly. We have really conditioned ourselves in our society to think about our body on like a 24-hour cycle. We talk a lot about this in our period recovery program, and we are talking a lot about this in our period recovery guide that's coming soon. Your body, yes, is on a 24-hour cycle, but it doesn't reset at midnight. It's more about like the training load, what's happening over an extended period of time. And I think when we look at, calorie recommendations, protein recommendations, they're all like grams or calories per day. So we assume that like everything's happening in a very singular way, but all of our days are connected, all of our hours and all of our minutes are connected.
No, I think that's so important. And something that we talk about so frequently is that like you aren't a 24-hour clock. There isn't a reset button that happens at midnight. But because all of the food labels are based off of a 24-hour, a single day intake and things like that, we definitely get into this mindset that it really is like a 24-hour cycle. And then we reset and everything starts like back at zero. And that's not really how it works. Like there are constantly things changing within the body that, we're using one substrate more than the other. Like things are always happening like throughout time. And I think that that's kind of a hard thing to kind of think about, especially when you're thinking about like training, because so many of us believe that like increasing training and constantly striving for more training and pushing ourselves is really what is going to help like increase performance. And it's really what's going to help like take us to the next level. But in reality, like that component of rest and incorporating recovery is so important to allow your body to have like a moment to recover so that way you can come back and like train harder the next time.
Definitely. And when we look at HA and we look at period recovery specifically, recovery days are so important because it can be one of the crucial ways to help get you into a positive energy balance. Just like we were talking about, again, our body's not like resetting after 24 hours. A lot of the times with period recovery, we're so focused on getting like 2,800 calories a day, 2,500 calories a day, but you are changing every single day. And some days 2,800 calories might put you into a positive energy balance. And some days it's not going to, especially with all the athletes that we work with. It's almost really hard, if not impossible, to be in a positive energy balance every single day. If you run a marathon, if you're cycling for 6 to 8 hours, it's going to be really hard for you to be in a positive energy balance on those days. But that means you have to get into a positive energy balance on other days. And when you don't have a big block of training or competition on a rest or recovery day, this is a wonderful opportunity to get into a positive energy balance.
So important, especially when we're thinking about that aspect of period recovery, but also when we think about like just training, I feel like in general, because if you constantly are in a low portion of energy availability or you're constantly training and not fueling yourself properly, that leads to some of the complications that we talk about really frequently on this podcast, like low energy availability, which we can see also sorts of other like complications that can come along with that. So always remembering that no matter where you are, if you have a period, if you don't have a period, still maintaining that positive energy balance is important for both athletes for sure.
Rest days are some of the most challenging days for athletes. Many of you might be listening to this episode and you want to start implementing rest and recovery days, but you might be scared. I totally get it. I once really struggled with adding in rest and recovery days. I felt like they were going to slow me down, prevent my progress. And I understand how challenging it can be to start implementing them. Jenna, if somebody is in this situation right now and is in this place, what recommendations do you have for them to start implementing some rest days?
First off, this is such a valid concern, especially if you're someone who has been training for an extended period of time, used to training every single day of the week and not incorporating rest and recovery days. I think a big thing would be first thinking about like what your goals are. If it's improving performance, if it is getting your period back, if it is making sure that you are progressing towards some type of a goal, then you know that a rest day is extremely important and recovery is really important to helping you get to that goal. So really just kind of taking a moment to assess where you're at and what your goals are, and then starting small. So if it feels more comfortable, instead of going on another 60-minute run, to go on a 30-minute run on what is going to eventually be a true rest or recovery day, and then maybe even working that down into a walk or something like that with the end goal of creating a true recovery day, making sure that those steps feel comfortable so that way we can slowly start to work towards that goal of making it a true recovery day. And then depending on your goals, if you need to incorporate more recovery days, maybe more than just one of those, making sure that that's done in a similar way and in a way that feels comfortable to you. Finally, the thing that I would say would make sure that you're bulking your recovery days or scheduling your recovery days around your highest intensity training days to allow for that recovery. Sometimes that can also help feel really good after you've maybe, if you're training for a marathon, run your 20 miles. The next day you're resting, or maybe you're resting the day before to make sure that you feel really good and energized for that run. So scheduling your rest days based on your current training is also another really valuable tool in order to start implementing those rest days into your plan.
I love that. Another thing I would like to add, just because you aren't training on a rest or recovery day day, it doesn't mean that you're no longer an athlete. And something that I really struggled with is really focusing only on what was happening with my sport and not necessarily prioritizing the other things to help with my athletic performance, right? Like I've shared, I really struggled with my nutrition, struggled with rest, but there's so many other parts about being an athlete and performing your best than just like the training, right? Having proper nutrition, having proper hydration, stretching, mobility, strength, and doing some of these things on your recovery day to help you perform your best on your training days is going to just really overall help with your performance.
When we think about a true recovery day, how many days are you supposed to take for rest or recovery?
At least one. You should have a true rest day at least once a week. We often recommend 2 rest days, or maybe 1 true recovery day and then 1 like recovery day where maybe you're doing some stretching or some rehab, a less than 30-minute walk, some type of very light movement. But I would say 1 day at least is pure recovery, and then the other one is a light recovery day.
And the light recovery day does not mean that you're taking a 7-mile walk with your dog or that you're doing a light intensity bike ride for 10 miles or something like that. Just because it doesn't feel like high exertion to you doesn't mean that it doesn't require a lot of energies. And requiring that energy isn't going to change simply because it doesn't feel like the highest exertion level that you have capability wise.
Yes, this is my favorite. Oh, I just did a spin class because it was my recovery day. A spin class is not recovery. That is a high intensity workout.
Yep. When it comes to training that you have right now, you are working towards running the New York City Marathon. We've talked about how exciting that is and what a massive and major like milestone, I guess, in your running career this will be as far as like your first world major. How are you incorporating recovery days in your training leading into that race, even though it's not for several months?
So I have maxed my weekly runs to 4 days per week. I think that is something that is really important to me and it makes me feel really good. So I have 4 run days per week. I will not go higher than that because a big goal of mine in 2025 is like not to get hurt. A big mistake I made in the past is running too many miles and running too many days and neglecting a lot of the other things like I shared that are happening outside of running. So my goal is to run 4 times per week and I'll have 2 strength days. One of those days will be separate from running. And then depending on how the other strength and how that load is, I might pair a run with a strength day because I do actually really like having 2 recovery days. I know sometimes it can be hard, especially trying to incorporate the strength training. So it just really depends week to week. But something that I really do enjoy, and I never thought I would say this, is having 2 like recovery days.
Ooh, Reilly, I love this.
I know. I would 2017 Reilly would have never taken 2 recovery days like in a month. And now she's taking them in a week. But it's been actually so eye-opening because I've been running so much faster and I feel so much stronger. And I've not been having a lot of my nagging pain in my knee and stuff because I'm taking and prioritizing rest more.
I love that. I think that that's such a big realization is when you are training, injury prevention is such a big part of that. And then you start to incorporate more rest days and all of a sudden you're like, wow, this workout doesn't feel like I'm starting off and I'm already 6 miles deep. It feels like I'm starting off on fresh legs. It feels like my lungs are good. And that is such a great feeling to start a run versus feeling like you're starting already bogged down, which is very common when you start to reach those extremely high mileage weeks and you have a big running goal at the end of it. So I absolutely love that.
I think the injury prevention piece is key because if you take an extra recovery day, you may be missing out on 4 or 5 runs over the course of 2 months. But if you're injured and you have to take 2 or 3 weeks off, that's 12 runs.
Yeah. I think rest and recovery is also a big one from the perspective of when you start to feel those aches and pains, because like we've talked about before, if you start to feel uncomfortable or if you start to feel like something might be heading towards an injury, taking a couple of rest days in a row before you start to train again is super important because just like Reilly mentioned, taking 5 or 6 rest days in a row that then makes sure that you aren't becoming injured because you keep trying to run on something that's inflamed or run on something that's not feeling comfortable is a way better approach than not being able to run the race at all because you are injured.
What about you? How are you approaching your rest and recovery days?
I think that this is something that has changed for me a lot during this marathon training than my previous marathon training, because previously I would put my rest day before my long run day and then I would still continue continue to train the day after. And that's just what I felt was good at the time. This time I've switched that and I've started to do a short or speed shakeout run the day before my long run and then taking a true recovery day the day after my long run. And that just helps my body feel so much better because I'm not asking it to like continue to work at such a high intensity the day after. I feel like that works just better for me. And then I am really listening to my body. And if there's a day that I wake up and I'm like, it's just not feeling like something I should do today, I'm resting, even though if it wasn't like a scheduled rest day for me, incorporating that as it feels good and as it feels appropriate versus feeling like I have to stick to this schedule so strictly that I'm just like way more fluid and way more flexible with it than I was before, which that was definitely a big adjustment for me, but it's more about like listening to what my body needs. And again, like the end goal for me is to maintain like my health so that way I can run, because even if I don't end up PRing in this race, I want to run this race. Like that means more to me than like a PR. And so like not every race am I going to PR. Like that's just the truth of the matter. I'm not going to PR every race, but I want to be healthy and I want to run every race and I want to try to PR every race. So that's a bigger deal to me than constantly pushing myself because I feel like a day off is going to impact my PR ability.
I was talking to one of our clients in our period recovery program exactly about this topic. And we were joking because with this athlete mentality, like we want to PR everything that we're doing. And we were joking that we should make shirts that say like, this isn't a PR, because like you can't PR everything that you're doing, even though we really want to.
Yes, 100%. And that's such a hard thing to accept because I think we feel a lot of times if we don't PR that we failed, but it's not a failure. I think you've mentioned this on a previous podcast that there are no failures. There are just like learning experiences. And I love that. I think that is such a valuable way to like reframe when you don't hit the goal that you have.
Yes, you either win or you learn.
I love that.
Before we sign off for today, a lot of questions come in from our athletes who are wondering how to fuel on a rest day. What are a couple of your tips or recommendations on like, should fueling be adjusted? How to fuel on a rest day? Does it look similar to a training day? How do they optimize their fueling on a rest day?
Oh my gosh. This is the answer that we love but hate to give. And that's it depends. It's super important to fuel your rest day. You shouldn't intentionally be trying to consume less on a rest day because you aren't active. So fueling that rest day is so important. I think the things that are going to change as far as like the quantity or the portions or however we want to look at that is your training around that and also what your goals are. So that's really going to impact that too. But like overall, especially if you're working towards a positive energy balance, that shouldn't look that different from a training day.
Exactly. I usually say like your fueling is probably going to look exactly the same. Your pre and post workout is probably not going to exist. So instead, we're going to have to turn that into a complete snack. A big issue that I see, especially with period recovery, is people dropping off with meals, sleeping in through a meal, not thinking that they need to eat enough because it is a rest day or a non-training day. But if you're not fueling your rest and you're not fueling your recovery, you're never going to get your period back and you're never going to optimize your performance.
And that's just sometimes the hard truth.
It is, but we're here to tell you guys all the hard truths because we want you to succeed.
If you do have additional questions about rest and recovery and how you can optimize those days in order to promote your period coming back or to improve your performance, please let us know. You can always leave them in the comments of this podcast, or you can find us online. You can find Reilly on Instagram at easy.sports.nutrition, and you can find me at jenna.fisher.nutrition. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Eat More Carbs podcast. Please make sure you rate, subscribe, and review. And as always, remember to eat more carbs.